chair, we know this was a very quick election, and especially, we all know, and the weather is not great right now, but it was very important that we had these conversations where we had a community meeting around our candidates, get to meet our candidates, get to see them in person, and also just have a conversation, get to ask questions face to face with our candidates, and also have the community have the opportunity to. I know advance voting started today, so, and I think it's for the next 2 days, and then there's the official election day on February 27th, right? So I definitely hope that everyone used their democratic rights and go out and vote. It is, right now we're in a very pivotal time of our country and our community, and the Finch community is always going through its own transition with many redevelopments. We have the transit system that is coming through our community. We're seeing resources poured into the community. We just want to ensure that the residents, current residents, are the ones that are also benefiting, and our seniors or young people that are talented. And as I said, at the end of the day, this community matters, all right? So with that being said, I'm gonna pass it over to Butterfly to just give a quick introduction of herself.
Hi everyone, how are you all doing? How are you doing? I know it's really hard, it's been cold outside, the snow is so discouraging, so we're so happy to see you all here tonight. We are recording, we're not recording you all, but we will be hearing your voices when you ask questions. It will later be posted on our social media, and we'll make sure it's accessible on YouTube for the elders then. We got you. Okay. Yes, so also we're nonpartisan, okay? So the work that Jane and Finch Education Action Group does, JFAP, we're nonpartisan. We really want to just create a space for residents to ask questions of the candidates. It's not a debate. And we're not promoting any one party or any individual. We just want to make sure that this is an opportunity for you all to ask questions beyond the door knocking. Is that cool? Okay.
All right, thank you, Butterfly, for that. So with that, I'm going to be going through some quick housekeeping before we introduce the candidates, okay? So please mute your phones, okay? I don't want it to be disruptive for someone speaking or asking a question. So just put your phone on mute. I know that many things are going on. Another thing is that the washroom is right out on the right as you exit this door. So if you need to use the bathroom, it's literally as you exit, it's on the right. Also, just no shouting. Everyone will get an opportunity to ask their questions and a follow-up. Just be mindful that if there's a good amount of people that have questions, we do want to give folks an opportunity to each ask a question, okay? And just be respectful. This is a space that we want everyone's voice to be heard. People might also just have a different perspective than yourself or just ideas. That's okay. So with that being said, I am going to introduce the candidates. Okay.
So all of the candidates who made the deadline to run in this election have been invited and have accepted, except for one, Paul Nguyen, who is running for the PC party. Will not be in attendance tonight.
All right. So I'm gonna start introducing the candidates, and obviously they have their name, their signs up here with their name, but they can just raise their hands just in case some folks can't see from far. That's okay. So this is going to be going in alphabetical order. No, sorry, not alphabetical order. I just checked. The first candidate is Levan Hassan. Thank you. Jean McGuire. Oh, sorry. My apology. Levan Hassan for the Ontario Liberal Party. My apology. Jean McGuire for the Communist Party of Canada. And we have Tom Markovic of the New Democratic Party. All right, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves. After that, we're gonna open it up to questions from the audience, and you'll also be given another 2 minutes, okay? So I'm gonna start with Levan. Okay, you're gonna be the first one, and you have 2 minutes. Just please be respectful of the 2 minutes, just so that we can get through it, okay?
Kamisha's doing timekeeping. There we go.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Levan Hassan, and I'm proud to be here today to represent the Ontario Liberal Party. I want to thank the Jane and Finch Education Action Group for inviting myself and all the candidates here tonight to be able to have this opportunity for constituents to ask us questions and for us to be able to answer them adequately. A little bit about myself. I am currently an elected school board trustee. I've spent my career in public service working in housing. I've spent the last 3 years at the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, traveling all across Canada working with Indigenous communities and some of the most marginalized communities in all of Canada. Not just specific to Indigenous, but mainly Indigenous communities. And I've been able to help them provide housing solutions through grant funding and housing programs through the CMHC. I've also worked in the City of Toronto shelter system, where I worked with some of our most vulnerable communities, particularly in the downtown core, particularly the Sherbourne and Dundas area. I'm a former professional athlete, basketball player, born and raised in Toronto, played Division I in the US, and I also was able to proudly compete on the Somalia national team. And I am an advocate for after-school programs, sports, education, and anything that can help our students reach academic success, as they are the future leaders of tomorrow. And that's one of the main things that I do as a Key Parts trustee. So I want to thank you everyone for having me here today, and I'm looking forward to having you speak.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna give Jean McGuire, you're gonna have 2 minutes also, okay? Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Is this on? People can hear me? Very good. My name is Jean McGuire, as you have heard, and I'm running for the Communist Party of Ontario. And to tell you about myself, I think I would like to speak about what makes me most proud of my life. And the first thing is that I was a founding member and became the National Cross-Canada Chair of the Canadians Concerned About Southern Africa. And that was an organization that we formed to support the struggle against apartheid in South Africa. We didn't win it, of course, but we're very proud of the fact that we had a voice in that struggle against apartheid in Canada. And we put pressure on the government, we boycotted liquor stores that were selling South African wines. And you all know that there is presently a struggle going on that also has apartheid, and I'm proud to say that I support that struggle against apartheid in Palestine and in Gaza. I'm also proud of the fact that I was very much involved in the struggle for women's rights and became the national president of the Congress of Canadian Women, and fought very hard for something called the Bill of Rights for Women that would guarantee women across the country their rights, and women in all or strata of society across our country. And the other thing I want to say is that what I learned from those struggles is that what we win, all of the things, whether it's medical care or pensions or rights for women or transit or whatever, has been won by people not voting. Voting is important, but if we stop with a vote, we lose the opportunity to win our rights, because we win them by making the organizations that fight for those rights strong. Organizations like the ones that are sponsoring this meeting, Jane Finch against Action Against Poverty, the ones who are struggling for education rights. Supporting them, they're mobilizing, they're organizing in support of rights. And it's that activity that wins us all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Jean. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Markovic of the New Democratic Party of Ontario.
Thank you very much.
1 second. Can I get that muted? Go ahead.
It's okay. I'm Tom Kosovic, and I think many people here know me very well. I'm a lifelong resident of this community. I've dedicated my entire adult life to advocacy locally here, both through volunteering as well as through my work experiences. I've had my hands in many different projects throughout this community over the years I've been here. I decided to get into public service because of the experiences I had growing up as a tenant in this area, and seeing my father, who passed away when I was young, and my mother was the sole income in our household. And the experiences I saw, the barriers felt by my own family and many people that I grew up with, told me that I had to become part of the system to try to make things more equitable and fair for all the people in this community. So it's an honor to be participating yet again in this debate. It's a tradition every election. I'm proud to be here, and I can't wait one day for a conservative to show up to debate as well. So thank you so much for this opportunity as always, and I look forward to questions.
Yes. So Paul and Nugent sent us an email after we had done a few follow-ups, because one thing we wanted to do is that we wanted to ensure that we reached out to everyone that registered that they were running for some party or independent. So we did a follow-up a week later when we originally sent out the email, and the email just stated that he'd rather to do door-to-door. Spend his time doing door-to-door. Yes, so that was noticed. So as I said, we know at that time when we done our research, it was about 4 candidates, and I'm not sure if
There's no break.
if there's any. Okay, yes.
No.
As I said, we just wanted to just give everyone an opportunity just to know the candidates, who they are, and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to the audience for their questions. Please, if you know your question, and I want to give you at least like a minute or so to figure out how you want to ask the question, right? Just so that I can give everyone an opportunity in the room to ask a question, or if there's a follow-up and so forth, okay? And each candidate will have about 2 minutes to answer that question. Or if somebody has a direct question for a candidate, that's also okay. All right, so,
All right. So there are some groups that have been working on different campaigns. So there's some questions that are ready to go. There's a workers question, and then I'll be, sorry, excuse me.
Hi, I'm Ron. I'm a resident and I'm a member of JPAC, Finch Action Against Poverty. So, right now I'm going to set up the background. Right now, the current minimum wage is $17.20 an hour, which hasn't kept up with the rate of inflation. And a lot of people are struggling to pay rent or buy food and so on. On top of that, there's the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and it looks like we're going to have a bird flu pandemic on top of that. It's showing us the importance of paid sick leave, paid sick days. But many workers still have enough paid sick days. So that's going to put their health at risk and even the economy at risk, because sick people can't work. So my question is, if elected, will you support raising the minimum wage to at least $20 per hour to help the workers keep up with the cost of living? And furthermore, will you commit to ensuring 10 employer-paid sick days for all workers to protect both their health and economic, in the economy? Thank you.
thank you. All right, I'm gonna start it this way, 1, 2, 3, okay? So Jean, you're up.
Okay,
And you have 2 minutes.
Very good, thank you very much for the question. In the last summer, the Communist Party went on the streets with a campaign called "One Job Should Be Enough." Because the problem for many people is that earning the wages they're earning, they can't afford to live on one job. Or the job isn't a full job. How many people have got those gig jobs, those little part-time precarious jobs? So we have a campaign, one job should be enough, and our call was for $25 an hour minimum. That's what we think people need. What else can you live on in this city? You know, you can live, I suppose, if you're cutting back on all the food you eat and you're telling your kids what they can have for this and they can't have a winter coat. Not this year, you have to wear your older brother's last year coat. You know, this is, the cost of living crisis is enormous, and workers are the ones who are paying the price. They're not getting wages that are sufficient for people to live on, and we call for a better minimum wage. Everybody's wages will go up, by the way, when the minimum wages go up. It's not like it's gonna cause somebody not to get a job. It's never done that, by the way. It has never done that. So we support workers' rights on the job. They should have 2 weeks of paid holidays for sick holidays. Look what happened in COVID. People got sick and they couldn't take time off. They went to work sick. No, that's not good enough. So sick time is required as well. All of those rights, and the right to unionize, because I'll tell you, the jobs that have good conditions are union jobs. And we shouldn't complain about their conditions, we should demand them for ourselves. And we get them by getting ourselves a union. That's what I have to say about workers' rights. Okay, thank you.
In fact, just 1 second, please. Folks, just a quick reminder, if you can just put your phone on mute, just double check, greatly appreciate it, okay? Thank you. Go ahead.
So the Ontario Liberal Party will be supporting increasing the minimum wage. We will actually be looking at a model of a regional living wage structure, understanding that different cities in Ontario need different living wages. So a city like Toronto will be different than a city in Northern Ontario, and we will make sure that everyone's wages are adequately measured according to the needs of the cities that they live in. Instead of just having one rate that's just throughout all of Ontario. So that's something that we will support. Ontario Liberal Party also does support unions. We support workers' rights, and we will make sure that workers do have adequate amount of sick days to make sure that they are taken care of. So essentially, we will be supporting workers in all aspects. Thank you.
Thank you. So the NDP have long-time supporters of increasing the minimum wage. It goes back a long time. In fact, the Labour Council was here at San Romano many years ago, fighting for increases. I was the member of provincial parliament in this area since 2018, and I'm proud to have supported initiatives to increase the number of sick days, especially during the pandemic. It was ridiculous that people were being told to stay home and go to work. People were sick, and they were then in turn putting themselves and others at risk. And so time after time, the NDP supported and laid down unanimous consent motions over and over in the legislature, and these were voted down repeatedly. Of course, we want to continue to raise the minimum wage, and of course, we should be indexing it to inflation, because as things continue to go up year after year, the money that you have in your pocket is just not enough. And with regards to unions, and I know this was brought up, I don't know where my family would have been if my mother was not a unionized worker with a benefits package to take care of my father, who was not well, and a pension that she could live on. So I've been a lifelong supporter of the union movement, and without the union movement, we would not have the rights and protections of workers. And the best way to protect all workers is for them to be unionized and join a union.
Thank you. All right.
So when you introduce yourself, please introduce your name if you're comfortable. And also just keep in mind, we want to hear as many people, so keep your questions as tight as possible.
Thank you. My name is Marcelo Ruiz. I'm Hispanic. Okay. To me, that idea of the $25 is needed, and it has to be done as soon as possible. There is a problem with the cost of living right now, and we are not doing anything about it because we live on the hands of the monopolies, the oligarchs of this country. Our food. Okay, when we have farmers in Ecuador, I'm from Ecuador, that are proposing to Canada to come to Canada with the product, but directly with just price. Not exactly what we are getting right now. Right there, what they pay down south and all over the world is very little to workers. Okay, and most of the money that is paid for the food that we pay, right here, it goes to the hands of minorities, oligarchs, down south and all over the world. So we have to resolve that issue But I think one of the problems that we have is that we are not participating on solving the problems. We are living on the hands of politicians, bureaucrats, to solve those issues. And people are not doing anything about it. So I would appreciate to know from each one of you, what are your positions, whether you are on the government, or parliament, or whatever, okay? What are you doing about the cost of living? What are you doing about the housing shortage? What are you doing about the cost of rent and the creation of jobs?
So that might be really lofty in 2 minutes. So candidates, you decide how to manage that question.
Yes. All right, I'm gonna, after the third question, I'll switch the rotation, okay? Jean, I'm sorry, I'm gonna start with you again, and the next set of questions will start with Tom, okay?
And you can all leave your mics on.
Yeah.
You don't have to take it on and on.
Okay. Well, that's a very large question you posed. I'm gonna focus first of all on the housing, because I walked around in this neighborhood and went into the various buildings, and the one message I received over and over and over again is rent is too high. By the time you pay your rent, there's not enough left over. I mean, it's just, people are paying more than 50% sometimes of their income on rent. That's outrageous. Communist Party platform, rollback rents. Rent control on every unit that exists. Everyone. And it has to be on the unit, not on the tenant. If the tenant moves out, they don't get a chance to raise the rent. It's linked to the unit, not to the tenant. And that's an important one, because as soon as somebody goes out, they just jack it up 10, 20% if the market can bear it. Our position is those rents should be rolled back. People should not have to pay more than 20% of their income on rent. I'm not sure earning so much that having 50% left over is enough to cover everything, but for most people that's not the case. Your income doesn't cover 50% for rent and more than that. We also call for building public housing, affordable housing. So 200,000 rent geared to income units is needed now. 500,000 affordable housing, so not necessarily geared to income, and 15,000 transitional housing. Housing for people who are in transit from a mental situation, abuse in the home, all those issues or homelessness, requiring those people needing it. Those are our positions with respect to housing, and that's what we are committed to doing. And that's what we would fight for. And you're right, it isn't what we do in the parliament, it's what we fight for and gain through our work, as I said at the very beginning. We need to do that. We've already talked about our wages. Cost of living, other than rent, food. There used to be a time when people rolled back the price of food. I was around when they rolled back workers' wages. Well, if they can roll back my wages, and that was pretty painful, let me tell you, they can roll back prices. They can put a maximum on milk, and they do it in British Columbia right now. So I see no reason why we can't they've made bigger profits than ever. Those food companies have made a killing off of their ability to control that. We can roll those back. There's no reason for that kind of price gouging that's going on in the food markets. And fuel. This is a country that makes food. How is it not possible? So I think we've got lots of things that we can do about that, about the cost of living. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. All right,
Okay, so cost of living is something that I consistently hear at the doors. My team and I have been able to knock thousands of doors in Humber River-Black Creek, and that's the first thing that we hear: cost of living and affordability. So for the first thing that the Ontario Liberals will be doing is reducing income tax for those that earn between $50,000 and $75,000 by 22%. That immediately impacts a quarter of this riding that's over the age of 18 and is working, which is thousands of people who will be immediately impacted, and that will put money back into their pockets. Secondly, we'll remove HST from home heating and hydro bills. We'll also waive the provincial land transfer tax When seniors seniors will remove the provincial land transfer tax for everyone, not just seniors. And we'll also remove the hidden taxes and fees that developers are put into the pricing. So for example, when you're buying a home that's worth $1 million, you'll be saving $170,000 on that new home. So we'll be doing that to support households. In terms of small businesses, many small businesses are struggling. We'll be reducing small business tax in half, from 3.2% to 1.6%. That will save businesses $18,000 a year. That will help businesses with new hires in our community. That will help with business expansion, and also help them invest into things like tools and machinery. We'll also provide financial relief, saving these businesses $18,000 a year, and this will directly impact 275,000 businesses in Ontario out of the 450,000 in existence. So this is major financial relief that we're doing, and we know that this will directly impact the people, the community of Humber River-Black Creek. Also for youth unemployment, we see that youth unemployment in the city of Toronto is at 17%, and that's even further exacerbated in Humber River-Black Creek, and it's even further exacerbated when we look at marginalized youth. So what we're implementing in Ontario Liberals is that we're going to bring 40,000 new jobs, co-ops, internships, and we'll be working with unions, we'll be working with the private sector to make sure that these jobs are given to communities like Humber River-Black Creek. Community benefits is of the importance. There's over 200 development projects happening in our community, and we need to make sure that these construction projects are hiring from our local community. Sometimes you see these construction projects are bringing people from an hour and a half outside Toronto, but we got to make sure that they hire local here. And community benefits in our Ontario legislation was brought forward by the Ontario Liberals, and Doug Ford and Conservatives tried to remove it, and I'll make sure that that doesn't happen and we empower them. So the Ontario Liberals is the only party out of the top 3 Conservatives and Union Liberals that will be removing taxes in any manner. So I'm happy to be representing Ontario Liberals, and hopefully that will help in those who are struggling with affordability.
Thank you, Hassan. And Tom Markovic, it's your turn.
Thank you. I'll begin really quickly. I've been a consumer protection creator for a long time in Ontario, and actually I have introduced legislation to try to break up some of these oligopolies through a consumer watchdog in Ontario. And so we're seeing price fixing, we see collusions, and it is big oligopolies that run all sectors. And they continue to drive up costs, and they benefit from all of this. This is something that we're clearly against. And in fact, I introduced legislation to begin a public telecom provider to actually compete with these big telecom providers, because we need more public options, not privatization of healthcare and everything that we continue to see, which continues to drive up costs. This is something I fought for. But of course, affordability and cost of living is one of the biggest issues facing everybody, especially in our community. You cannot be spending more than half of your income on rent. And the only way to solve this is to reinstitute real rent control, which existed when the NDP had government in the early 90s, was torn up and never restored by either the Conservative or Liberal governments that followed at the time. We are seeing every single reason of a lot of landlords to try to evict tenants, whether through rent evictions or other means. And what happens is the median income for tenants in the city of Toronto now is $2,600, which is absolutely unlivable for most people. This is unacceptable. We continue to fight that. And for large multi-residential complexes, we are looking to stop AGI, above guideline rent increases. And in fact, when I work with the councillor, I helped organize buildings to combat some of those in many different ways. So there are many things that are happening. We want to bring in a grocery rebate when it comes to education. We want to start reducing those tuition fees, turn OSAP back into grants if you're able to apply. There are many, many ways in which the NDP wants to combat the affordability crisis, the cost of living, because it is the greatest thing facing especially communities like this. And finally, affordable housing. We want to build 300,000 affordable housing units across the province, as well as 60,000 supportive housing units, because most people right now who are working are having to access food banks to be able to put food on the table. Unbelievable and unacceptable that this is happening. And many people cannot afford private rent and are being forced into homelessness. Again, so by creating more affordable housing, bringing in rent control, we are going to be able to help so many people, not just in this community, but across the entire province. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so that was a really heavy question. So I really encourage encourage folks to just keep to one issue. We kind of made 4 minutes to make a more meaningful response, but please keep it to one question so we can get really good, wholesome responses from our candidates. Is that cool? Okay. I have 1 second. Is there any questions on this side of the room? Okay. Oh, okay. Thank you, sister.
Hello, my name is Natasha, and one question quick. How are you guys going to like take care of the kids, like, and mom as well too? Like, if the mom don't have enough money to send the kids to school, how are you guys going to take care of that?
So it sounds like there's 2 parts to this as well, right? It's school, but also maybe childcare as well when we're talking about homes. Yeah?
All right, yep, we're gonna start with you, Tom.
Yeah, so certainly, we need to be providing more public and nonprofit, and I repeat, public and nonprofit daycare options. And daycare should be, $10 a day daycare should be available to everyone. And in fact, many members of this community were very disappointed because we were fighting for more in-school daycare options. And in fact, 5 promised daycares were canceled by the Ford government. And I was there myself with community members, parents, and guardians with petitions. I proudly read those in legislature, and I continue to fight for those. And all the things that we talked about to help parents who are struggling, again, when you're able to bring in rent control, costs, whether it's in housing, whether it's grocery rates, when we are able to help people meet the rising costs of living, this is going to help families as well be able to afford everything from putting food on the table. But ultimately, having affordable and accessible daycare for every single parent here in this community and throughout the province is essential. There should never be barriers, financial barriers for parents to be able to take care of their children, and it's really sad living in a wealthy province like Ontario that we continue to see these barriers not be fixed in a generation of representation by the government that we've seen before this one and this current government that's happening. We need real change.
Thank you. Go ahead, Luna.
So when it comes to daycares, as Tom just mentioned, the Conservative government did cancel 5 daycares that immediately impact ridings like Humber River-Black Creek. So that was something that I advocated against. I was really upset by that, and so were all the other trustees. As you can understand, the education system, we work closely with these daycares. So as an Ontario Liberal candidate, that's something that I am proposing to bring forward, is the building and construction of more daycares to help families in Humber River-Black Creek and throughout Ontario. And all the other items I mentioned when the gentleman asked for cost of living, the Ontario Liberals, our main theme in our campaign is to make cost of living more affordable in Ontario. So we're doing that from removing taxes for everyone. We're doing that by making housing more affordable, putting a cap to rent hikes, and removing hidden taxes that we see when people try to buy homes. We're also going to look into price gouging as well, so that families are not paying excess amounts of money on their groceries, and that will save them money that can help with their day-to-day lives as they take care of their children. So financial relief and affordability is the main themes, and I'll continue to advocate for that if elected as MPP.
Thank you, Luna. And I'll turn it over to Jean.
Thank you. Well, the first thing is, if a mother is having trouble sending a child to school, you've got a family that isn't receiving an adequate income. So one is, if they're working, the wages have to go up so that the family can live properly and live a life that they should be living. And if those are unable to work or cannot work at the time, then what we've got to talk about is, you all know that this Ontario Works and the disability pensions are poverty level. They're brutal. $8,000 a year? Nobody can live in Toronto on that. This is nonsense. This is not a livable wage. We need a guaranteed livable income for everybody. And then we can go up from that. That's what we need for everybody. And we need the daycare. Obviously, we need $10 daycare. Maximum 10. It should be free. Education is free. Starts in grade 1 at free. Why doesn't it start before grade 1 at free? What is the problem here? These are things that are, it's unconscionable that in Ontario, we are facing situations, questions like this. This is unbelievable that, you know, on January 3rd, at 9:43 a.m., the top 100 CEOs of the corporations had earned $58,000. The top CEOs of 100 corporations had earned the average wage, and just imagine if 58,000 is the average, how many high wages are in there? The CEOs had earned January 3rd at 9 o'clock in the morning, they were done. They got their 58,000 in. From now on, it was all gravy for the rest of the year. We need to tax those people. We don't need to lower taxes. We need to remove taxes from the poor and put it on the top 100.
All right, team, thank you. You're welcome. All right, so we'll go over to you.
No, hold it.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Peter Woelfel. I'm a long-term resident of Humber River-Black Creek, a former tenant and also a former landlord that's very concerned about the housing issue. Okay. And during the Ontario Leaders Debate last Monday, no one recognized that the unfair and outdated Residential Tenancy Act is really the root cause of most of our housing problems and desperately needs updating. Over 50% of the cases right now in the LTD, I think almost everybody can agree, the LTD is overloaded and it takes way too long to get any case through. Well, 50% or more of those cases are for non-payment of rent. And that's resulting in unacceptable hearing delays over a year, which means the investors, owner, landlords, they may not receive rent or compensation for damages during this period, while they still have to pay their mortgage, the property tax, insurance, interest costs, and that all contributes to the problem. Contributing to the problem, the RTA prohibits the landlords from charging late fees or interest, and that motivates some tenants from withholding rent, and there's no negative consequence to those people. 99.9% of tenants are good people, they're honest, they pay their rent on time, and they don't cause damage. But the problem is that 1.1%, that is the bad apples, and you don't know who they are. Once a tenant leaves, it's then impossible to collect the money that is owed due to the lack of disclosure requirement needed for garnishment. So for the tenant, it's like getting a huge interest-free loan that never needs to be repaid. The RTA also restricts landlords from changing the locks after a 14-day grace period without LTB involvement. And this contributes to the ongoing increase in the LTB backlog. It's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. The RTA fails to make fixed-term leasing binding, allowing tenants to remain in the properties beyond the agreed-upon term. The residential real estate actually may be one of the worst investments that anybody could make. And yet everybody's talking about building more affordable housing. Who's going to pay for that? Who will own it? Who will maintain it? Who will take the risk while so many tenants don't pay rent or damages and they refuse to leave?
What's
Okay?
your wrap-up question?
If that happens, then there's not going to be enough houses.
Hold on, folks.
Almost done. The short-term solution is not build more housing, because there's a lot of people who need housing right now. Yeah, I'm just about done. The short-term solution is not build more housing. It's actually to fix the Residential Tenancy Act to encourage profitable, safe use of existing housing or make space available with some minor renovations. If renting can be made profitable and safe for the investors, then there's going to be a lot more supply of housing, and that will lead to increased competition, and that will lower the price naturally. You don't have to do it through rent control. When the supply exceeds the demand, it's going to naturally decrease the price.
Your question
So finally,
here.
my question to you is, given all that, what I just said, will you commit to, I'd like to know from each of you, if you would be committing to an update to the Residential Tenancy Act to address these issues, making residential properties safe and attractive as an investment, to encourage more investors to build and offer more rental space to tenants at competitive prices.
Take it.
Thank you. All right, guys, I get it. Remember, not everyone's gonna agree with everyone's questions or political view or anything, but let's be respectful. Number 2, please keep your questions as short as possible and 1, okay? All right, Tom, I am starting with you again, and then after that, we'll switch it and then the band starts.
Sure.
First round of questions, go ahead.
Thank you for the question. So I do recognize the distinction between small investor landlords, those renting a basement, versus large multi-residential landlords with buildings or even portfolios of buildings. The difference between an individual investor versus those who are financializing the housing market, whether it's single-family homes or many different forms of homes. There is a difference. But I also recognize that we are living in a time where the average cost of rent is $2,600 for tenants here in Toronto and across the province, and more families are being driven into homelessness and are seeing absolute financial and health ruination of their own lives because they're not able to afford rent. And living in Ontario, living in a province like ours, living in a nation like ours, it's terrible to see that. So this is something that we must address. I talked about rent control, and I will say though, not all cases that end up at the LTV are initiated by landlords. In many cases, there are tenants initiating cases there because landlords are not providing the services that tenants are paying a lot of money for. And so I do support tribunals and other forms of places having backlogs cleared in principle, because I think when someone is seeking a day, on whatever case it is, those days should happen soon. And of course, in the justice system as well, because there are many cases, and I know it's outside of the scope of your question, but we are seeing justice delayed, resulting in many cases of people facing assaults and other things, never seeing their days in court, and people who've committed terrible crimes walking away scot-free because of that. So with regards to tribunals, I do agree that we have to clear backlogs, but again, noting that it's not always the landlords, often tenants that are taking landlords there because they're not keeping up their end of the deal. So thank you for the question, appreciate it.
All right, Devon, go ahead.
So I would say, to answer your question, I want to start off by saying that housing is the biggest issue right now in our community throughout Canada. And many renters are struggling to make ends meet. So I work at CMHC, and according to CMHC, for those who don't know, is the governing body of the federal government of Canada that oversees housing. And what we consider affordable is 33% of your income. And as Tom just mentioned, the average right now is $2,600. People, that's well above what people can afford. So what we're proposing to do here is that disputes are going to be inevitable. We've seen that happen time and time again. But these cases shouldn't be going on for a year or 2 years. So what we're going to do is that we're going to cap them at 2 months. These should be resolved within 2 months, and we're going to make sure that the landlord-tenant board is adequately staffed and resourced in order to do so. Secondly, we're going to set up a rental emergency fund for tenants that are facing eviction and cannot make the payments, so that we can be as inclusive as we can with the landlords as well, and also looking out for tenants too. And we will also put the rent cap, making sure that rent does not go higher than what inflation is each year. So essentially, that's what we'll be doing, and we hope that that will combat. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Jean?
Okay. I haven't got a problem with small families renting rooms or parts in their houses and I agree, there's probably a lot of issues for them, but you said 99% of the tenants are good. I've been in the buildings here, 99% of the owners are not. I was in one building. There's a sign in the lobby that says where your nearest cooling station is. They haven't retrofitted that building. They haven't given the people cooling in a time when we are dying of heat. They expect little old ladies to go wandering down the street to find the cooling station. So if we have a problem, we've got a problem with landlords. We don't have a problem with tenants. We have a problem with landlords. We have a problem with the cost of rent. And I'm sorry that you feel that that's an imposition. I think that the majority of people in this place, and being imposed on by landlords. You take a look at the profits of those companies that run those big buildings. They're not suffering. They're not suffering like you are. And there's lots of things we can do about it. People have listed some of the issues. But the core question for us is, we want to build public housing. And yes, there's a way to fund it. Doug Ford is talking about, he calls it a $60 billion tunnel to put under the 401. It's not going to be $60 billion. It's going to be $200 billion at a drop of a hat. And we could use that to build housing for people in Toronto, housing that's needed and is affordable.
All right, thank you. All right.
Hi, my name is Abdul Aman. I used to work at Social Aid for the last 17 years. I have my special son who is a cerebral palsy and his mother suffering bipolar disorder. And I receive ODSP. And you guys know that after COVID-19, everything is expensive. So I need you to know, I want to know what you guys have, a family who have a special child in this area. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, sir. And we're going to start with Levan.
Yeah, so to answer your question, in terms of ODSP, we will be doubling that. There's 500,000 people in Ontario that are on disabilities and a part of the ODSP program. And actually, we look at Toronto, Humber River-Black Creek as quite a large portion of that too. So this is very important. The current rate of ODSP, you cannot survive in today's day and age. It's impossible. And Doug Ford has not changed it in the last 7 years. So not only will we double it, but we'll make sure that it continues to increase on par with inflation as well. To answer your other question, autism and special education is a major issue in the province of Ontario. We have like I'm in the education system, and it's just absolutely absurd of what's going on with our students. We've been underfunded by $3.2 billion since 2018, since Doug Ford came in. And if you break it down, if you want to quantify it, it's equivalent to $1,500 per student annually in each and every school. So if you take a student from Westview or Emory or C.W. Jeffries, it's $1,500 per student. And a lot of the funding that has been funded too is for our special education programs, students on the spectrum, students with autism. So I'll make sure that when I do get elected, the Ontario Liberals will be supporting students under special needs. We'll be supporting the ODSP program by doubling it, and we will make sure that our education is adequately funded to make sure that the students are able to achieve success.
Well, I agree with my colleague. The ODSP payment is way too low for anybody to live on, and it should be doubled, and it should meet a guaranteed livable income. We can't just have a guaranteed basic. We've got to have a livable, because usually when they talk basic, they're talking below standard. They set it too low. And I agree also that one of the problems that we faced in Ontario has been this cutting of funding for education, and of course the first thing that gets cut out is what they consider a frill, which is apparently your children. They have needs that they don't want to fund, and we feel that they should be funded. But I'll tell you, the issue about this is that I want to let you know that the Communist Party will be supporting you whether it's in Parliament or not. We will be on the streets when you're out calling for better funding. And we will be on the streets when you're asking for better payments in ODSP when it actually doesn't happen in the Parliament. Because as I said at the beginning, the way we're going to get what we need and what we want is by making sure that the pressure outside from us and through our organizations like this one is so strong that they cannot cave when they get pushback. And they will get pushback. They'll get pushback from the big guys that don't want to pay their fair share of the taxes. So they're going to get pushed, and we got to be there to hold them up, to make sure that they deliver what they say they're going to deliver. Because those things are absolutely fundamental to each and every one of us. We need them in order to live a good life. Thank you.
One moment, Tom. For the folks who are sitting in the back, if there's a few seats at the front that are just standing, you can come on up to the front, okay? Just so you know. All right, Tom, go ahead and answer the question.
It's great to see a full room. It's a good problem to have. So, I was really proud in 2022 that the NDP at that time were the only party running on doubling OESP and OW at that time. And I was proud, month after month, since 2.5 years ago, for members of my party, the NDP, constantly introducing motions, questions, unanimous consent motions to double OESP to double OW. I was proud to circulate petitions to that effect and to table them over and over, calling for a doubling of OESP and OW. It is absolutely beyond a livable wage at what people are facing right now in OESP, and this is something that we continue to fight for. It is something we will bring in when we get there. I am very proud to work with my NDP colleagues in calling for and introducing a motion for a caregiver benefit. There are many people across the province in our community taking care of a loved one. It could be a child, it could be a sibling, it could be a parent facing needs, health needs. Many times huge sacrifices are made. People have to stop working, retire early, and find many ways to support that loved one. And it's never enough. We tabled a motion and the government shot it down, and we haven't given up fighting for it. And again, in the schooling system, we are just not funding schools based on needs. We heard that it is $1,500 less per student. There's a huge backlog in repairs, but many students are facing special needs, and we don't have the educators there and the support in classroom to help those families. Massive investments need to be helped, both helping families at home, helping them in schools, helping them with new supportive housing. So much needs to be done, and we are committed with the NDP, and I'm committed to fighting that, and I have been fighting that since I was elected, not just re-elected 2.5 years ago, but for the 7 years I was here, and for all the years of my life that I've been advocating for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Hi, I'm Helen Kennedy. I've lived in the community for over 60 years, believe it or not. I used to have to walk across a farmer's field to get to Westwood when it first opened, and actually horseback riding at Jane's Fields. So I've seen the community grow a lot. My question is around post-secondary education. York University and Seneca College both could play a huge role in the community and in supporting our youth in particular in getting the education that they deserve. I know a lot of us have children that we want to be, some of mine have already finished that, but they've been to York. I'm an alumni of York as well. We just heard this week that York is cutting back tons of programs, mostly in languages and arts. And those are the programs that we want our children to be able to go to when they're of age, and hopefully that we can afford to send them. But as tuitions increase and crises are happening at the post-secondary level, we heard what happened to Laurentian a couple years ago, that they went bankrupt, and all sorts of programs where they're basically running a shoehorn program up there in, where are they, Laurentian? North Bay? Sudbury, sorry. It was up there somewhere. So we want to make sure that York and Seneca remain in our community and can play a very good role in terms of building support for our youth. What would your parties say about protecting and expanding post-secondary education?
So, Levan, you are up because we're still starting in the sequence one last time, and then Jean, and then Tom.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm an alumni of York University, so I definitely think York University, quite honestly, should play a bigger role in community development, especially Humber River-Black Creek. When we look at youth unemployment especially, labor market intervention is something that we should be working with the private sector and academic institutions collectively, so that we can create programs, short-term programs that can get students right away into fields that pay quick. Skilled trades, IT, technology, These are the fields that we need to make sure that we're uplifting and getting students in, because that's the demand of Ontario right now. In terms of making life more affordable for students, the Ontario Liberals are proposing to cut student interest on OSAP loans. We will also be making sure that when students do finish school, they don't have to start repaying until they get a job that pays at least $50,000 a year. So the federal Liberals eliminated the federal interest on loans, and now the provincial Liberals will be eliminating the provincial interest on the loans. So essentially they'll be interest free and not having to repay until they start making at least $50,000 a year. In addition to that, we're going to be putting a cap on international students at 10%. And the reason for that is, we all know, my parents came here from another country as immigrants, and so did many of you, right? And as important as international students are to our community, we don't have the infrastructure and resources to support some of the numbers that we've been seeing. Some of these colleges are bringing in up to 90% of international students. And I don't think that's right, and I don't think it's fair to the students, quite honestly. So we're gonna put a cap at 10%. Some of these schools solely rely on international students for their funding. So in addition to that, we'll be boosting the operational budget for our colleges and universities to 30%, which is currently at 30%, to a much higher rate. Ontario has the lowest operational budget for colleges and universities throughout Canada, so we need to definitely fund our schools more. Thank you.
Thank you. So the important thing about going to school is how much does it cost? And you know, there's parts of the world that are much less rich than Canada where students go to school free, including university and colleges. There's no reason why not. You know, there's talk about the international students and we're blaming them. Well, they're not to blame for what happened, you know? They didn't come here because they just were wanting to abuse us. They came because we were offering them something. And why were our universities appealing to international students? Because their funding was cut. This was a way for them to make money that they couldn't make from their local students. And so they were raking in the dollars from international students in order to cover the deficit that had been caused by lack of funding from the government. We don't need to blame them. What we need to is fund the universities so that they don't end up start looking around for new sources of funds. That's the first thing. I don't think that we should be reducing the interest on loans. There should be no loans. You should go to school free.